would like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land where I stand today, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respect to elders past, present, and extend that to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are listening today. 2020 has been a big year. Collectively, we have all experienced the effects of the drought, the bushfires, and now COVID-19. While we have all experienced these at the same time, the level of trauma and the impact this has had on individuals' lives has been very different. At the beginning of this year, there was no way of knowing exactly what would unfold. However, I believe that despite many negatives this year, that we've been presented with an opportunity. We have been given the chance to have important conversations around how and why specific social groups are included and excluded from both the communities that we live in and across Australia. Arguably, the most important of these conversations has been around the entrenched inequities faced by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And it is these inequities that I will be speaking about today. While the discussion around institutional racism is not new, the intersection of the Black Lives Matter movement and COVID-19 together has brought this discussion into the mainstream and has highlighted the urgent need for action. If this is to translate into lasting and positive change, we need to continue to examine the factors that create systemic racism and keep this conversation going. It is also important that non-Indigenous Australians self-reflect on who we are as individuals and how we may unconsciously or consciously uphold systems that benefit people like me while continuing to disadvantage Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. Today I stand here as a white Australian woman committing to using my privilege to keep this conversation going, both as an ally and as an accomplice. I'm a public health researcher, and through my work with communities, my research examines the factors that contribute to poor health and the solutions that can be developed to address these. I first became interested in research when I found out about the number of poker machines in my local community. I wanted to better understand what factors influence behaviour and what could be done to reduce the significant harm. Through my research, I found out that it was policy decisions and commercial interests that unfairly allowed hundreds of machines into some of the poorest communities across New South Wales. My research now covers a range of different health topics and areas, but at the core of what I do, my work aims to reduce inequities. Differing from inequalities, which may be random and not preventable, inequities are differences that are unjust, unfair, and that can be prevented. No matter what the social problem or health condition, it is almost always the same social groups who are at the most risk and who experience the most harm. Inequities are built into the conditions that people are born into, where they work, or where they live. The key message here is that these are socially constructed. They don't just happen randomly. People in positions of power and responsibility have made decisions that mean that certain social groups get different levels of access to resources and opportunities. These decisions can relate to things like limiting the number of health services in a remote community, or denying people a basic income that enables them to attend university, and instead they must start working full-time. In 2020, policy decisions have been made to reduce such inequities during the COVID-19 pandemic. Things like free childcare and the job seeker and job keeper payments support people to continue working during this time. These measures and others address the factors that produce inequities and prevent inequitable health and well-being outcomes. These kinds of measures don't just happen by chance. They are deliberately implemented to change social structures and policies. Very recently, there has been a new national agreement around the Closing the Gap targets. These measures aim to reduce inequities and improve the health and well-being of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. You may have heard about the gap between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. But did you know that this gap occurs across most life outcomes and is caused by factors that are socially and culturally created? These gaps relate to areas including mortality, chronic disease rates, disability rates, housing security, and levels of education, employment, and wealth. If we do not address the factors that are causing these gaps, they will continue to widen. We need to understand the broader context of why these gaps exist. Otherwise, we will continue to see the problems of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people rather than recognising that it is the inequitable systems that continually let people down. Aboriginal people are the longest living continuous culture in the world, not just surviving but thriving for over 65,000 years. So why do we have this gap? And why is it that it is so big? I want to pause here and give you a different example of how culture can affect health. Researchers call this the healthy migrant effect. The idea is that often when people migrate to a new country, they do so for economic reasons. They arrive healthy, but after a period of time, their health may decrease. This can even be seen in some parts of Sydney where some migrants have higher levels of poor mental health. Imagine you have just moved to a new country. You don't have your social support around you and you're exposed to a whole new lifestyle. Your experience may also be affected if you don't know how to access healthcare when you need it, or if when you receive this care, it is in a way that you are not used to. Your culture may not even have a term for the mental health condition that you've been diagnosed with. So how do you process this, get treatment, but also recover? The effects of this can happen over 5 to 10 years. Imagine the long-term impacts after 200 years. Or if instead of moving to a new country, it is your country, your culture, and your way of life that is taken away from you. Health is more than just the absence of disease. It is the physical, social, emotional, and cultural well-being of the whole community, so that each individual can achieve their full potential. It is about feeling safe, supported, having access to resources that are important for life and health. This includes things like housing and employment. It's about being able to get an education and choose a career path, to participate fully without fear of racism or criticism. It's about being able to access health care, but knowing that when you receive this care, both you and your beliefs will be respected. Unfortunately, many Australians, including Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, do not receive this level of social respect, resources, opportunities, and care. Addressing the factors that drive these inequities is complex. One of the reasons is that the rationale that drives the persistent, entrenched inequities has been growing for over 200 years. Another reason is that different people have different ways of viewing things, based on their own culture and experiences. In our society, people in positions of power decide on solutions before asking those affected what needs to change. Or more importantly, identifying problems without asking people, what do you need to be supported? Now you may be thinking, I'm one person. I can't change governments or policies. In her new podcast, Michelle Obama talks about the relationships that we have with our community. She says, what we're really talking about is our place in this world, how we feel about it, and what we can do with the power that we have. I believe that as communities, we can create change, and the power to change comes from knowledge. It's about knowing what needs to change and demanding that this happens. It is in the conversations we have with others and how we react to what is said in the media. Do we accept what is being said, or do we demand more? We are all part of the one community, and we will all benefit if everyone is included and achieves their best. Through my research, I have learnt that this process takes time. It is important to take the time to understand the problems and the factors that cause this. We need to invest in people and listen to community solutions for the problem. If you only learn one thing from today, it is to seek out and listen to the voices of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, to listen to what they say needs to change and to work with them to make these changes. It's not just numbers or statistics, it's real people with voices and experiences. Experiences of intergenerational trauma, racism, living in a system not culturally appropriate. But it is also stories of ancient culture, strength, and resilience, all of which are very important to today. It is important to have these uncomfortable conversations, to listen to the uncomfortable things that need to change, even if that means that your power within a room may be reduced. It is important to use the power that you have to create spaces that allow people who have been excluded to be given a voice. As Michelle Obama says, it is bumpy and it is uncomfortable, and that is how change happens.